Do you want to be able to phrase on the guitar so that you're creating lines and ideas that are both memorable and melodic? There are some simple steps that you can take to make that happen regardless if you're a beginner soloist or if you have more experience. By the end of this video lesson, you will be able to build phrases that are simple to play and will absolutely work for you every time you solo. Now, by the way, if you're just getting started with soloing, make sure to download my free Beginner Soloist Handbook. It contains scales and arpeggios and other resources so that you can have them all in one place. The link is in the description below. Guitar phrasing encompasses a number of things. It could be note choice, it could be rhythmic ideas, or it could be how you play the notes with note decorations, such as slides or bends. Today, in order to keep things focused and simple, we're only going to look at the note choice aspect of phrasing. Now, when many guitarists solo, sometimes they're just using a scale and they wander through it, hoping to find something that sounds good. You can stay in key that way, but it's really difficult to play anything meaningful unless you have a lot of experience. One of the best things you can do to play something that sounds much more melodic is to play simple arpeggios as phrase builders. Now, a phrase builder is what it sounds like. It's something that you can use to begin or create an interesting musical phrase. Let's take a look at how we do that first. Everything we're going to do today is in the key of A major, and that means we will be using the A major scale notes to build our phrases. Also, the chords used in the backing track will be harmonized from the A major scale. Let's first look at a 3-note per string A major scale. It looks like this. We begin on the A here and play 3 notes per string for the major scale. These are the notes in A major, and this scale shape gives us the roadmap so that we know where those notes lie on the fretboard, at least in that one shape. Now, if we were to use this scale to solo over a backing track, it could sound aimless, scalar, and very random. And you would have to heavily rely on your ear to make sure that you're playing something that harmonizes nicely with the chords going by. Unfortunately, it usually ends up sounding like this. Instead, what we want to do is to phrase build by using very simple arpeggios. An arpeggio is a broken chord or where you play the notes individually. So if I took an A major chord like this, for example, like this bar chord, and I played the notes one by one, that's an arpeggio. Now that is technically an arpeggio, but it's not one we want to use for soloing. It's too big and clunky to use as a phrase builder. We also don't want to be completely random with our arpeggios, meaning we need to know the chords in our backing track so that we can play the proper arpeggio over each chord. The track we're using today uses the A major and D major chords, or more specifically the A major 7 and D major 7, but we'll get into the 7s a little bit later. For now, let's just call it A and D. So when the A chord plays, we want to use an A major arpeggio over it. When the D chord plays, we want to use a D major arpeggio over that. The A major chord is made up of the root, which is A, then a major third above that, which is C sharp, and then a fifth above the root, which is E. These are the notes we want to target, but I don't want to play a big bar chord and pick individual notes like I demoed before. That doesn't make as much sense to build phrases. So let's simplify and let me show you the A major arpeggio as well as the D major arpeggio. A major looks like this. A here on the 6th string, 5th fret, then C sharp here on the 4th fret of the 5th string, and then E on the 7th fret of the 5th string. So A, C sharp, E. Then the D major arpeggio is the exact same pattern, but we begin on the 5th string, 5th fret. D, F sharp, A. Right now, all we want to do is play through each of these arpeggios over the appropriate chord. So when the A major plays, we're going to play that first arpeggio. When the D major plays, we're going to play the second arpeggio. That's it. Let me demonstrate. right away, these arpeggios are making us sound better because we are harmonizing with the chords underneath them. And when you harmonize with those chords, you're playing something that has real meaning. It sounds so much better than just random notes. Now, of course, you can mix it up and you don't need to play starting on the root every time. You could start on the major third or on the fifth. So if I don't want to play it straight like this, I could start just mix it up. But the point is to start with those arpeggios because they're great phrase builders, and then you can go from there. Now, once you feel comfortable with those arpeggios and you feel like you really know those shapes, let's think back to our A major scale. Remember how that looked and keep that in mind. We're going to play the track again, and I'm going to use these two arpeggios to phrase build, and then just grab a couple of notes out of the A major scale. Now the cool thing about that is I was always keeping the arpeggios in mind, not only as phrase builders, but as great landing spots too. So I might end a phrase on a note in a particular chord, but I also use the A major scale to use some other notes in the key and just experiment and improvise. But of course I would always come back to my arpeggio shapes because I know those are the best notes to utilize, and I really want to emphasize the chords going by underneath. Now for those who want to go a little bit deeper, let's just add the seventh to each of these arpeggios. We'd simply add a seventh from the root of each of the chords to make it into a major 7 chord. So in this case, with the A major, the major 7 is right here on the D string, 6th fret. So the entire arpeggio is this. That's the A major 7 arpeggio. Now with the D major arpeggio, when you add the major 7, it sounds like this. And you'll notice it looks identical as far as the shape goes. So A major 7, D major 7. Obviously the two shapes are the same, and you can tell those arpeggios sound really good on their own even without a backing track. Now let's try these simple arpeggio shapes over the backing track and see if it helps us phrase build even more. When I use the major 7s that I slid into the octave note from my A major scale, I like sliding in and out of that octave because I think provides a nice sort of completion to that phrase. But you can add and subtract and layer your scale tones from your A major scale in and around your arpeggios and really build some nice melodic ideas. Let me quickly now play the arpeggios as my phrase builders, and I'll add in more notes from the A major scale. These are just fantastic phrase builders, and they automatically make everything you play sound so much better. You're not sounding scalar anymore, and you're using the notes from the chords, otherwise known as chord tones. It also makes you sit back and listen to the music better because you want to play something even more meaningful and connected to the chords going by. It really does push you forward in your soloing. Now obviously you can do this with other chords in a key if you're going to play over a backing track and it's got minor chords in it, for example. Then you can use minor arpeggios that are very similar. For instance, if I wanted to play an E minor arpeggio right here off this E, it has a very similar look to it. That's the E minor arpeggio. And then if I add the 7, it'd be right there. So again, very easy shapes that you can add in once you figure out the chords that are in the track, and that's a vital part to it. Try to figure out what chords are in the track you're playing over. That's going to obviously make you a better soloist. Now the main point of this entire video is to start using very small arpeggio shapes like we've covered and use them first as phrase builders. That's always going to work so much better than just randomly poking your way around a scale in hopes that you'll land on a tasty combination of notes. Now certain scale shapes lend themselves to being more musical due to their layout across the fretboard. If you're interested in learning about what I think are the most musical pentatonic shapes, I recently made a video about that and you can watch it right here.